At the height of its power, an empire rarely feels fragile. Streets are busy, markets are strong, and influence stretches far beyond its borders. From the inside, it feels like success has finally proven itself permanent. History, however, tells a less comfortable story. The moment power feels unquestionable is often when deeper weaknesses begin to form. The Roman Empire had this moment. So did Imperial Spain, Britain, and others before them. Wealth peaked, confidence soared, and expansion seemed endless. Yet beneath the surface, costs grew faster than stability. Tonight, we explore whether the United States may be standing at a similar point, not in collapse, but at a crossroads history has seen many times before. Welcome to Global Insight. Here's the central question that sits quietly behind today's headlines. Why do societies that become extraordinarily rich and powerful often struggle to stay that way? Growth brings influence, but it also brings obligations, habits, and expectations that are hard to reverse. The paradox is that success itself can change how decisions are made. Over time, strength begins to depend less on production and more on maintenance. By the end of this video, you will understand why this pattern appears again and again across history. You will see how wealth reshapes priorities inside an empire. You will understand why stability can mask long-term strain. And you will see how the United States fits into this pattern in ways that are familiar but also unique. Not as a prediction, but as a framework for understanding where pressure is quietly building. The story usually begins long before decline is visible. An empire rises by solving real problems better than its rivals. It organizes resources efficiently and rewards innovation. Institutions grow alongside economic expansion. Confidence is built through repeated success. In the case of the United States, this foundation was laid after World War II. Much of the industrial world was damaged or exhausted. American factories, capital, and infrastructure remained intact. The dollar became central to global trade. Economic leadership followed naturally from circumstance. This period created a sense of permanence. Growth felt structural rather than cyclical. Global demand reinforced domestic strength. Political decisions were shaped by abundance. Limits seemed distant and manageable. Over time, prosperity altered priorities. Consumption expanded faster than production in some areas. Financial systems grew more complex and influential. Long-term costs were easier to postpone. Short-term stability became the main political reward. This pattern was not unique to America. Britain experienced something similar after its industrial peak. Spain did as well after its inflow of colonial wealth. Success reduced the urgency to adapt. Comfort softened the pressure to reform. As wealth accumulated, responsibilities expanded with it. Military reach widened across continents. Administrative systems grew heavier and more expensive. Expectations of constant growth became embedded. Retreat began to feel unacceptable. The system continued to function, but with subtle shifts. More effort went into preserving influence than creating it. Decision-making slowed under layers of obligation. Risks were managed through borrowing time. Structural questions were postponed rather than resolved. None of this meant immediate failure. In fact, from the inside, these periods often feel like stability. Markets still operate and institutions still hold. Daily life continues without obvious disruption. That is precisely why these phases matter. The mechanism is gradual, not dramatic. As wealth grows, systems are built to protect what exists. These systems add rules, layers, and guarantees. Each one makes sense on its own. Together, they change how decisions are made. Flexibility slowly gives way to caution. Resources begin to flow differently over time. More money is used to service past commitments. Less is left for experimentation or rebuilding. Maintenance becomes the priority. Innovation still exists, but it competes with obligations. This shift is easy to miss because nothing suddenly stops working. Governments face similar pressures. Voters expect stability, benefits, and security. Cutting support is politically risky. Expanding it is often rewarded in the short term. Borrowing becomes a tool to avoid hard trade-offs. Future costs are pushed further away. As debt grows, it feels manageable at first. Strong economies can carry large obligations. Interest payments remain affordable for a long time. Confidence reinforces the system. This is where history often shows a quiet turning point. The structure holds, but it becomes less responsive. Institutions adapt to this environment. Financial markets learn to price risk based on stability. Large players gain influence because they reduce uncertainty. Smaller disruptions are absorbed rather than addressed. The system favors continuity over change. This can look like strength from the outside. Over time, decision makers grow dependent on confidence itself. Markets must believe stability will continue. Allies must trust long-term commitments. Citizens must expect predictable outcomes. When belief becomes central, caution dominates policy. Bold reform feels increasingly dangerous. This creates a feedback loop. Stability encourages borrowing. Borrowing increases the need for stability. Each cycle reinforces the last. Like a machine that runs smoothly but cannot easily change direction, momentum replaces adaptability. Motion continues even when conditions shift. Economic growth also changes behavior at the individual level. People plan their lives around constant expansion. Homes, education, and careers are priced on future expectations. When growth slows, adjustments feel personal and immediate. The pressure spreads quietly through society. None of this happens because of a single bad choice. It emerges from many reasonable ones. Each step aims to protect prosperity. Together, they reduce resilience. The system becomes optimized for yesterday's success. Adapting to tomorrow becomes harder. By the time strain becomes visible, options are narrower. Reforms are more disruptive, costs are larger. What once felt like control now limits movement. This is how peak wealth can slowly turn into structural fragility. Leverage in these systems rarely sits in one place. It is spread across institutions that shape incentives rather than issue commands. Central banks influence borrowing costs. Governments set the rules of spending and taxation. Markets react to signals, not intentions. Each actor responds to pressure from the others. Large financial institutions hold particular weight. Their size makes them difficult to ignore. Stability in these firms becomes a public concern. When they face stress, intervention feels necessary. This creates an expectation of protection. Risk does not disappear, it concentrates. Political leaders operate within narrow margins. Short election cycles reward immediate results. Long-term restraint offers little visible payoff. Decisions are shaped by public tolerance for disruption. Maintaining confidence becomes a priority. Structural reform often waits. International partners also hold leverage. Trade relationships, reserve currencies, and security commitments link countries together. Choices made at home affect trust abroad. Breaking expectations carries costs. This limits how quickly an empire can change course. Influence becomes a constraint as much as an asset. Citizens play a role as well. Living standards create expectations that are hard to reverse. Benefits feel earned rather than optional. When systems support daily life, dependence grows quietly. Pressure flows upward through public opinion. In this environment, no single group controls outcomes. Power is distributed, but so is responsibility. Each actor protects its own position. The system moves forward through compromise and inertia. Leverage exists everywhere, but decisive control exists nowhere. When systems like this break, they rarely collapse all at once. They adjust under pressure. The Roman Empire did not fall in a single moment. It stretched resources to maintain borders and administration. Costs rose faster than revenue. Over time, a flexibility disappeared. In late Rome, currency was repeatedly debased to meet obligations. This eased short-term strain. It also weakened trust in money itself. Trade became harder. Local economies fragmented, life continued, but at a lower level of efficiency. A more recent example is the British Empire. After reaching global dominance, it faced mounting costs of defense and administration. 2 world wars accelerated these pressures. Debt limited choices. Influence remained, but control steadily narrowed. In both cases, decline was uneven. Some regions adapted better than others. Institutions survived even as power shifted. What changed was not identity overnight, but capacity. Decision-making became reactive rather than strategic. Breaks can also take softer forms. Inflation erodes purchasing power. Public services strain under demand. Political polarization rises as trade-offs become unavoidable. These are adjustments, not disasters. They signal stress rather than collapse. History shows that outcomes vary widely. Some systems reform and stabilize at a lower level. Others transform into something new. The key point is simple. When adaptation is delayed too long, change becomes more costly. This matters because these systems shape daily life more than most people realize. Prices reflect long chains of policy and confidence. Jobs depend on stable investment and predictable demand. When systems strain, small changes reach households quickly. Adjustments feel personal even when causes are distant. Stability becomes something people notice only when it wavers. Rising costs are often the first signal. Housing, healthcare, and education grow more expensive. Wages struggle to keep pace. Borrowing fills the gap. What feels like individual pressure is often systemic. The burden spreads quietly across generations. Work is affected in less visible ways. Companies delay expansion when uncertainty grows. Hiring slows before layoffs begin. Long-term planning gives way to caution. Opportunities narrow without clear announcements. The economy feels tense rather than broken. At the national level, choices become harder to explain. Trade-offs replace promises. Maintaining influence costs more than it once did. Compromises feel unsatisfying to everyone. The future feels less predictable, even if life remains functional. This is why understanding the pattern matters now. Empires do not weaken because they suddenly forget how to function, but because the world around them changes faster than their systems do. Peak wealth can create comfort, but also rigidity. History suggests that strength is not measured by how high a system climbs, but by how well it adapts once momentum slows. The question facing the United States is not whether it is failing, but whether it can adjust before pressure turns into constraint. If you're looking for clear, in-depth analysis of economics and geopolitics that goes beyond surface-level news, subscribe to Global Insight, Beyond the Headlines.